when you allow yourself to connect to your heart, you get into a creative flow. And that's when doors really start to open.
Well, and I think one of the things that shifted too for you is like you are able to say the things that you want to say, and if there was ever that reaction, there's zero interest in associating with people who aren't emotionally intelligent enough to allow you to share your opinion. It's like instead you may have felt like I have to fit in everywhere, and now you're like I actually don't need that.
Right, and it's not from like a I'm better than you kind of thing. It's just like I now can use my introspection to be like, is this the right place to have this conversation, or should I save it for someone else? And it's no longer like they're not inept enough to like understand it, but it's just like, you know, I know my relationship with this person and I know how to fit in, but not in such a fearful way. It's just like, I know
it's wisdom rather than fear that you're using there.
Yeah. Like I know with this person, like we're going to talk about sports, and with this person, like I can have maybe more of a in-depth heart to heart conversation. And it's not bad or good depending on who the person is. It's just the relationship. And it's just, it's overall acceptance of how people are and who they are, and it's no more judgment of like, oh, they're mean, or they're this or they're that, or I'm this and I'm that. It's just like, that is what it is. And I now know just kind of how to regulate that better.
Well, it's and that's a great point. Thanks for sharing that, because it's coming from your authentic self, right? This authenticity. And instead of coming from the negative standpoint of like, oh, I hope they don't think I'm this, and like, oh, I gotta be this so they don't, you know, they don't judge me poorly or incorrectly or anything like that. It's coming from like, hey, I'm just going to be open, and I'm going to let my heart guide, and I'm going to be, you know, I'll let the conversation flow as it needs to flow. Yeah. And, you know, you don't always open up to certain people, and you do to other people, but it's, you know, it's really being present in that moment to see what they need in that conversation, and vice versa from them to us. But it's in that point of relationship in all relationships, it's coming from an open heart and from a place of acceptance versus judgment centers, which the brain always does, right? Always goes through judgment first. And that's why, you know, to judge somebody's situation, because that's why it's so important to lead from heart and be kind. And whether it's a stranger you met or in very deep relationships, because most of the time we don't know what people have been through, right? That's why it's so important to be kind and lead from heart, to not judge, because you never know what that can do to people. But at the same time, it's great in all conversations, like you're talking about, to just be authentic and lead from heart. And that's easy to say, right? And that's what, you know.
And I'm still not perfect. Like I still fall into the kind of trap of people pleasing or chameleoning a little bit from time to time.
Yesterday, for example, when we were planning a time to record, we were going to record yesterday.
Yeah. And so, Worlds was going on, and the sole intention I came down here initially was for the Worlds, and it's a morning thing. It starts at like 7:30, and the men were racing yesterday, and I knew they were going to be wrapping up around probably 1, which they did. And our timeline, I could see I was probably going to miss the entire thing, and I spoke up and I said, you know, I think I'm going to miss the race if we go on the timeline that we're going for. And we ended up shifting and doing it today.
I was like, oh, well, then let's just record tomorrow. You're down here for the race. And she was like, uh-huh.
Oh, that's okay?
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay?
Yeah, so when we were talking about it last night, she was like, I normally wouldn't have said anything.
Yeah, and I would have done the podcast, and probably been a little resentful throughout the entire podcast, and then it would have ended, and then you both would have been like, okay, time to go to the race, and I would have been like, well, it's over now.
But that's cool.
But that's
Whatever.
cool. It's fine. I missed it all just for you guys. It's fine. I would have, but that was what I could have done, and old me would have done. And
And you
I
noticed in that
have to
moment.
say it took a lot of courage still yesterday
could
to
tell.
say that. I know I was very tiptoe about
was
it.
like, and I could see where she was going. I was like, oh, we'll speak up to say something.
But and like how mellow and my like to shift the schedule is not the end of the world. It's not make or break. Maybe it shifted things for you guys a little bit and not perfect but
it
was perfect though.
We were able
because,
to work everything
there was
else
some
out.
things that we needed to to handle yesterday, and I think the point for me is, I tell this to our kids all the time too, is like more people should speak up. Not more, everyone should speak up. Because when everyone says, hey, these are the things that I need to get done today, and these are the things that I need to get done. Like if everyone speaks up, look, there's enough time in the day
to get it
for
all.
everyone to get the things that they desire. Like 100%. And when people shift and allow other people to do things, and it always benefits everyone else too. So that's my standpoint that we talk a lot about in our house too, is like tell us what you need to get done, and we'll tell you what we need to get done, like with our teenagers.
Well, and I think that helps too, because I do feel safe, with you too, right? Like we've shifted from friends to pretty much family at this point, which is fantastic. So I do feel safe, but
I mean, you still asked if you can have some of my protein or my pre-workout, and I appreciate that.
But that's still that's a respect
still
thing.
polite.
I appreciate.
I would have
I'm
just taken it and been like, well, what's yours is mine, and I assume that I can have some.
Yeah, but it's still just whatever. But I feel safe around you guys. But I've also learned that I can do that a little bit more. I'm still not perfect by any means, trust me. But
well, it still took a little bit of awareness around it. But like, how much faster did you shift? And that's the goal, right? Is to like, at some point, maybe you won't go through just even that little bit of like, vacillating between, like, should I say something? Should I not? No, I just will. And then it will just be like, whatever needs to get done. It's like, hey, this is what I'd like to do today. Is there any way to work around it?
Right. And just say it directly, which I'll,
you have come so far in that. And that's awesome.
Because even just a couple months ago, I probably still would not have said that. So yeah.
But you were sharing with me last night a conversation that you had with someone that they immediately apologized to, because you are setting a different tone in your life energetically and emotionally, and people respond to that.
Right.
So when you respect yourself and your voice and your time, you don't have to be in your face about it and be like, this is me drawing a boundary line. And I don't allow people to talk to me like this, but how you show up in your life now, all you had to do is say, hey, what time do you think will be done? I picked up on it so fast, and probably because I know you so well, but I knew where you were going, but I knew it was important to you. And since I care about you and you have respect for me, that exchange was done so quickly.
Right.
And when you show up for yourself like that, and you are comfortable in your skin and you are operating from your heart, people respond to that differently. Because it's not I can't believe you would plan this over time. Don't you know that that's what I wanted to do, is go to this Ironman? That's what I'm down here for, which would have been really easy to do as a human being, projecting your...
And initially, not going to lie, I kind of was not in an angry way, but oh God, this is not working out. This is not aligning. This is I
gotta go to the race.
Yeah, right. I felt that, but then I was able to and just be like, hey, I would like to get to the race by noon. Because...
And I was like, oh, if we record, you're not making it to the race by noon.
And I was like, yeah.
Okay, so then let's
And I was
just do
going
it
through the time, and I was like, I know you said we were going to get there at 10, but it's probably not going to be 11, which means we're probably not recording till 11:30, which means we won't be out of there till 1, and the race is going to be over.
And then she came in and told me, and I was like, oh yeah, that's fine.
Right. I was like, oh, well, Lizzy won't be able to make it to the race, so let's just record tomorrow.
Right. And I still have in me that people are going to react really aggressively towards me because we
were like, fine. Then don't sleep at our house.
Yeah.
Go
you have
to
to
your
sleep in your car now.
I was like, okay. Land on it anyway.
Well, people fear that people are going to do that, but most people when you come from a place of heart, and that's the biggest point to me, is that instead of going to ego, because you'll go there for a second, And everyone does.
Yeah.
But how fast can you shift back to heart and say, hey guys, guess what? Like, this is really important to me and this is
This
what
is
I
what's
came down
going
here
on.
for. And we were like, oh, okay, cool. Like, no,
Right.
not a problem.
Right.
But if you would have come from the place of ego, right? If you would have come from the headspace and been like, that's really not going to work, or, this is what I came down. Like, if you would have came from a place of more
You
frustration.
guys are ruining my plans today. I should be there right now.
If
Like,
you
I should
would
have
have
been there
came
2
from a
hours
place
ago.
of frustration,
Yep.
the probability that, even though this is what we do, all of us get frustrated, and all of us, like, it's not that you're going to always eliminate all frustration from your life. It's that how fast can you let frustration in and then shift back from ego to heart, from head to heart, and say, oh, you know what? Instead of saying from ego, like, hey, you guys are making me do this and this is not what I wanted to do, you
Right.
shifted back from a care and said, hey, this is what I care about. This is what I want to do. And we were like, oh yeah, that's totally fine because we'll make it work.
Right. Yeah. And it makes me think about, like, when so that's me addressing a situation, but now I think about when people are coming at me and I need to respond or react. I'm so much different now. Like, I think back to my, like, high school relationship, and it was just so reactive all the time.
Right.
I was always reacting to him. He was always reacting to me. And it was just fight. And we would just build and build and build and build and just get so intense. And I think of a more recent relationship I had where he got reactive towards me, and I went,
I'm learning a lot right now.
that's what I said in my
This is
head.
interesting.
I was like, oh, okay. And that immediately neutralized everything.
Totally.
And it could have easily gotten into a really big fight. But not only do I not have the energy for that anymore, but I've learned how to just neutralize things for me, which in turn neutralizes things for them. And then they're kind of caught off guard and they're like, whoa, okay, so this isn't going to turn into a fight. And it just changes the dynamic of the relationship, and it turns it from a reactive relationship to a responsive. And it still might not be perfect or idealistic and perfectly healthy, whatever you want to say, but it's no longer
It's not a toxic battleground
right.
all the time.
Yeah, let's dive into that just for a second more, because it's like when you were in that toxic relationship, you were in a state of survival. Is what we talked
100%.
about on the last episode of stress. When you're in that stress or that survival, right? Stress induces survival. You only operate by subconscious programs because your conscious awareness shuts down. Frontal cortex shuts down. And so you're only reacting so quickly because of those subconscious reactive programs. And a lot of people out there say, well, don't react, respond. Respond, don't react, right? Well, it's like, well, how do you respond? As you shift to a coherent state, gets you in the present moment, activates your conscious awareness, activates the heart, especially the heart, then the conscious awareness. Then you can respond from a place of care.
Yeah.
Because you take a pause and you shift and reset. And now you're saying, oh, hey,
And that pause
I can either choose, it's a choice point, right? In all those conversations and all circumstances and all situations in life, it's a choice point of when you train yourself to be in a coherent state, then instead of, you can either choose to dump gas on that fire and react to him. And then what would have been? It would have been more reaction and a longer argument and a bigger fight. But instead, you have developed and trained yourself to make that choice point and say, you know what? I don't have the energy for this. I'm going to shift to compassion and say, that's not that big a deal. And automatically it sucks the air out of the fire instead of dumping gas on the fire. So by sucking the air out of the fire, by operating from your heart, then it opens the other person
Shifted
up a
the
little more, and they're
whole
like,
situation.
oh,
Right. And it's taken some time to make it a lot more quick of a transition.
sure.
And for everybody to find their own way to shift to heart and to shift to like a place of love or compassion or whatever, heart focused, centered emotion you're in. But for me, it's been the like that. Alti and I talk about it all the time. It's just go,
That's
interesting.
That is
that's my cue.
That's my pause.
Yep.
That's my pause. Some might just be to actually go into a quick heart focused meditation. Some people might ground. Some people might just need to like close their eyes for a second. But for me, I have created space to recenter, reconnect, and not even let myself consider going into that reaction anymore.
Right. Because, Gall, if you can stand there, I use the word gall. I haven't said that for a minute. Gall.
Golly. Gosh.
Golly. When you can do that, and when circumstances arise, and you can just say, that's interesting. That's such a place of power.
Yeah.
That other people's energy isn't dictating your energy. Outside external circumstances are not dictating your internal state, because our internal state dictates the external environment in the best way possible. And that's where, when you can be at that place and get that responsiveness and that place of acceptance instead of resistance to like, no, it shouldn't go that way, and you operate like that, then it is like, that's interesting. Oh, someone just did that? That's interesting. That doesn't matter as much, because I can either get very upset and go into that 7 to 12 hours of cortisol and adrenaline production and be thrown off, go into survival, take that into my sleep, get crappy sleep, be in a poor mood the next day.
And then go rant about it to a bunch of people and be like, can't believe they did this to me. And then I tell half the story and don't tell about how I reacted to them and make that,
and then you affect 2 or 3 other people's energy, and then they carry that negative energy and they go in that ripple effect, instead of just owning that heart space and saying, you know what? That really doesn't have as much to do with me, because once we understand that people's comments to other people are largely projections of how they feel internally, then it's
and even if they're not, even if it is true, like maybe they have a very valid reason of what I did or I offended them, still being able to have that pause stops you from being reactive and creating space to be like, is this true? Is what they're saying something I truly did to offend them? Okay, now let's approach it from a place of heart. And let's work through it.
Compassion. Hey, sorry I made you feel that way. How simple is that to eliminate such a large problem?
Well, and that's what we talked about a lot in our one-on-one sessions. It was like, okay, sometimes, when we talk about shifting to an emotion of the heart, it's like, maybe you're not ready to go into a total space of like love or compassion, but that moment of like, that's what we talk about. That's what we teach, is like, that's interesting, because it gives you that moment to go, I wonder what they're going through right now to have approached me like that. Or I wonder what I did that could have changed. And it causes you to go into curiosity to find the answer for that. And then from there, you can shift to, I can understand why they would do that.
Well, it's shifting to neutral.
Yeah.
From a circumstance, you got to be in a neutral standpoint. And that's what heart-focused breathing does in the moment. Shifts you to a neutral standpoint. Then from a neutral objective standpoint, right? Neutral's objective. Then you can say, that's interesting. That would really be kind of crappy if I really made someone feel like that. Or from my standpoint, I wouldn't want to make someone feel like that. So
because when I used to be reactive and kind of in survival, I would either be like, no, it's all your fault. But most of the time, I would take all of the blame. I'd be like, I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. I did everything wrong. Like in that past relationship, the second he would fight back, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. It's all my fault. It's all because of my father's trauma that he brought onto me. Like I would take all of the blame, all of the anguish. Everything is my fault. I'm the doing. I'm in wrong. And now I'm able to have that pause, get centered, and be like, maybe it is my fault. Maybe I did do something to cause that reaction. Maybe I didn't. But now I have the space to connect to my heart and be like, what is it?
And that's because you've retrained over, so you went through the 8-week program, and in 8 weeks, we really turned out different people, right? But it's the implementation
Right. Beyond just those 8 weeks.
6 to 12 months. That's like you were good after 8 weeks.
Right. But then I saw how much further I had to go. Like I was just like, I was the iceberg. I just saw the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And I knew like, wow, if I could grow this much this quickly in 8 weeks, imagine if I keep going with this mentorship, how far I can go. And you guys sold it as, you'll be in it for 6 months.
6 months. Yeah.
And here I am a year and a half later.
So really it was an 8-month program.
Yeah.
Like we
And you
we
didn't
dived
have
deep
to
in
do
8
it.
weeks. We dived deep in 8 weeks. And then from there it was like, hey, now the 6 months is the implementation, the real world application.
Yeah.
But now look, you've been in for a year.
And it's
over
interesting
a
too,
year.
because, the program ended and I was on such a high. I was like, I can do anything. I can dominate anything. And then I remember a shift, like probably a month or two after of life getting turbulent again. Like of like, oh my gosh, like life isn't great. Like what is happening? And thank goodness for the mentorship, because it was weekly calls and I was able to be like, okay, like, whoa, this was a really rough week. Like I went into ego. I was negative. I was this, like all these negative things. But to be on the call, to talk about it, to come back to the levels, to come back to heart focused breathing, I was able to walk away from that hour, sometimes hour and a half call.
on mine and Kevin's, we did an hour and a half.
But I was
longer.
able to immediately walk away from that call, like realigned, recentered. And there were Thursday night calls, which was perfect, going into Friday, going into the weekend. And, there was a couple weeks, maybe even months, where I needed that call every week to like recenter me, and like the next couple days would be great. And then I'd shift back and go back into kind of a more negative state. And then the call would happen. But that's how life goes. You can't always be operating from such a high state until you get the repetition and the practice in. And the mentorship allowed for life to happen and you to keep building on the tools, because you're kind of in a bubble a little bit. Yeah. Anytime you do programs, 8-week programs, whether it's health, nutrition, coaching, you're in a little bit of a bubble.
It's kind of all your life revolves around at that time, but it's not sustainable. That's not real life.
Right. And so it was like a quick, like, burst of let's get everything rolling. But then the mentorship, the weekly calls allow for you to go back to your humanness and learn how to navigate it with these tools that you get to keep coming back to each week, recenter, and eventually the calls were still super impactful, but they weren't the things propelling me to where I was. I was now staying there, and the calls just kept me there or raised me up a little bit. And now I'm like at a level where the calls have such great impact, but I don't rely on them. I can now rely on myself to stay where I'm at and do my heart focus breathing and grounding and all that kind of stuff. And the calls just keep leveling me up.
And it was we only did work the emotional release and the meditations 2 out of the 4 weeks, and you were still seeing those. So,
Absolutely.
So for the listeners, so the next level was, the first time, because Althea and I would do individual, we still do individual stuff, but individual session stuff. We do stuff. What do you do? Work. Stuff. But we do individual sessions, individual work. But the next level was the first time we tried a small group, and we had 10 to 12 people per round. And so now we've transitioned from the next level that may still exist with our other partner, Brad, but we've transitioned from the next level because we saw the need for everyone to have access, because the next level was an expensive program,
And we'd only do 12 to 15 people at a time.
Yeah, I said 10 to 12, 10 to 15, depending on the round of people. But it was, $2,500 to $3,000, and such a great value. But now what we're transitioning to, or what we've transitioned to, is raise your vibration, because we're going to use the same format, but that weekly of the emotional release and the heart focus meditation, but the heart math tools to use on a weekly basis, because where we're going is we want as many people as possible to benefit, right?
Yeah, so we noticed that so much progress was being made in the mentorship, for those, because once you went through the next level experience, everybody would go into the pool of the mentorship. So it was all the past rounds.
And what they got in next level was weekly work,
Right?
Weekly emotion code work, and Althea would remove those emotions, and Sarah helped too.
And you'd
remove
benefit
those
as a
emotions.
collective, like
And-
whether there was 5 people on the call for a week or
Right.
there was like 31 call, you benefit the more people are on there, because if maybe you don't have something upright directive to talk about or work through, somebody else might share something, but you still benefit from what you've worked through. And so with your raise your vibration, if you have even a larger group, you all
The
benefit so
more
much
people
further.
that are on the call, the more beneficial the emotional releases, and the more beneficial the heart coherent meditation is. Because the more heart fields are on the same call, the collective intention, and it's studied right now, Arizona University just did a study on collective intention, and the more people with the same intention
at the same time
to open up their hearts to gratitude and love and compassion, the more heart fields are open, the better the energetic effect is. So the more the heart is communicating with the brain and telling the brain to rewire itself through that neuroplasticity, for gratitude, neurological networks of compassion, neurological networks of love. And the more neurological networks we have, then, like you were talking about, I act like people can, I guess YouTube you can, but I'm like pointing to Lizzy. But then it's not a conscious thing. It's a autopilot subconscious program that when people say things, it's like, that's interesting. Right. And that's where we want to get as many people as possible too, is the place of operating from a standpoint of heart, where we're not taking things personally. We're not feeling frustrated and angry about something that we have no control over, and just staying in our heart. So we raise our vibration. We're operating from such a place of elevation and really just such a place of happiness and peace.
Well, it's a huge energy expenditure to go into that defensiveness, so if you can neutralize that and preserve your energy for creation, for connection, for love, that's a way better, more rewarding expenditure of energy.
Right. And like initially in, the 8-week program, you put in a lot of time and effort to do heart focused breathing. Like I think you recommended to do it twice a day, in the morning, right when you wake up, and right before you go to sleep, or if you have time in the middle of the day, right? And so initially you do really need to put in that time and effort to keep going back there, because you got to kind of deregulate your old programming to get to that heart space. And now, after being in it and going through the mentorship past those 8 weeks, I would need to do it in order to stay there. And now it's not like I don't heart focus breathe anymore, but it's almost like I just do it without even realizing it anymore, because it's, withdrawn in, and I don't necessarily have to do it every single morning the second I wake up in order to have a great day. Obviously, if I did it every morning, it would just make things even better.
Right.
But it's intrinsic now, and that pause is there. But it took effort, and it's such a positive effort that you have to do. You get such rewards from it almost immediately. You can feel the shift, and then it lingers and lasts for a majority of the day. But it does take a little bit of effort in the beginning, but it's so rewarding immediately and long term to stick to that.
Yeah, it has a cumulative effect. And so even if you did it for 3 to 5 minutes, and we'll teach this on the Raise Your Vibration call, and here too, but if you do it from 3 to 5 minutes, I recommend 10 minutes in the morning, which is, we're not saying go meditate for 30 minutes or an hour, which is great, but it's such a powerful, the way we use it is such a powerful method that if you do it for 3 to 5 minutes, we scientifically and statistically show the cumulative carryover effect lasts for the rest of the day, meaning that when you get into a heart coherent state in the morning, and especially after, if you join the raised vibration calls, especially after we remove those negative emotions that have accumulated on the nervous system, it allows the heart, nervous system, and brain to settle into that a lot easier. But you do 3 to 5 minutes in the morning, and that cumulative effect, that carryover effect lasts throughout the day. So when stress arises throughout
because
the day,
it always does.
it's not as impactful from a stress standpoint.
And even
you're
if it
able to
initially
stay in more
is,
ease. You can shift back. You can shift out of it because it doesn't last as long and the nervous system response isn't as long. So
I would even do it sometimes when my students would be talking to me. Like if they were talking to me and I could feel their stress and anxiety, I would just, you don't even have to know, your eyes can be open, and I would just, 5 seconds in, 7 seconds out. And like I could immediately feel a shift in them and in me. And it took all of 30 seconds to do, but you can shift back into it.
Oh, I do it all the time. I mean, I do my practice in the morning and the evening.
Your intentional practice with your monitor.
Yeah, my intentional practice with my heart rate variability monitor and the app, so you can see that progress. I still do that. And we've been doing it for years. But it becomes a point where you don't want to miss a day because it's so impactful and so beneficial. But at the same time, it's such a good practice, the quick coherence technique. It's called in the middle of the day to shift and reset.
Show up.
And even if it's not, even if it's nothing's really showing up, it's just like, being hyper aware and hyper conscious of like, I want to feel more gratitude right now, and really do your heart focused breathing while I'm driving and look at the beauty that is around me.
I would have an hour commute every day, both directions. And so a lot of my drives, if I wasn't listening to a podcast, was heart focused breathing. Cause I'm like, well, I can make the time in the morning, but that's going to maybe add more stress. So I might as well do it in a more peaceful state with my eyes wide open, but still getting into that positive.
Because it's so easy to throughout the day, you're busy, we're busy. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts. It's easy to be like, oh, okay, I got to do this and this and this and this, which takes you out of the present moment, which takes you out of creation. And it's that letting go and just saying, ooh, I'm going to enjoy while I'm driving. I'm going to enjoy this present moment. I'm going to listen to the words that are being spoken on this podcast. I'm going to listen to this music. I love music. I'm going to really feel the music and enjoy it, or at the gym instead of just going through the motions. I stay in coherence at the gym and heart focused breathe as much as possible, because heart coherence produces extreme coordination in the body, because you have human growth hormone and DHEA flowing. And at the gym, there's times where you want to, incur some cortisol and adrenaline.
He wants to listen to Metallica and rock
some
out.
Cortisol and adrenaline to lift some heavy weight, but we actually show extreme coordination under heart coherence at the gym in athletes and while lifting to really expand that muscle and expand the breathing capabilities and fine tune the physiology in the body and the physical body too. I just like to do it a lot because I feel really good.
Well, and ideas come to you. I mean, if you have a decision to make, you can do that and get more clarity. You were going to say something.
It's like how if you go for a walk, like, or shower thoughts, your best ideas come while you're in the shower, but heart focused breathing is that same kind of centeredness that you get. And it doesn't have to be this big ordeal. And I sometimes would heart focus breathe because I had to, right? And like, then that's not actually doing anything. And I would have to talk myself through it and be like, wait, like you're going to be here for these, 5 to 10 minutes anyways. You might as well actually get a benefit out of it and try and connect to your gratitude, your compassion, whatever
being
emotion.
Intentional.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like, you're going to be here anyways. You might as well let yourself connect to your heart and enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's
and not check the box.
That's the
not
aspect
just
to me.
the assignment.
Yes,
that's the aspect to me that really stands out for me in my life is, and you can relate to, I enjoy so many things now that I didn't used to enjoy. Like I enjoy driving down here 4 hours. Like I enjoy driving. I always kind of did, but like I enjoy all of the aspects, because when we start realizing that enjoying and living in the present moment instead of worrying about yesterday or
the future.
worrying about tomorrow and the crap we got to get done. Life is to be enjoyed.
Yeah.
And that comes from heart coherence, and that comes from, it comes from heart coherence and being in your heart and living in the present moment and really feeling the gratitude of everything that's happening and the care and the compassion and everything that's going on. But like, there's not much that I don't enjoy. I used to, coming into winter, I'm birthday's in June 3rd. Shout out to Gemini's.
Oh, that's my brother's wedding.
Oh, well, then maybe I'll eat 2 cakes on my birthday at his wedding. But I've always loved summer. And when I was a kid, it's like, oh, we're out of school and things like that.
You're always
summer
waiting for
vacations
that,
and things like that. But I love September through December. I love football, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I skipped over Halloween. It's Halloween tomorrow. But I love the end part of the year, but I find enjoyment when it's snowing. I find enjoyment when it's raining. I find enjoyment when it's sunny. Like, I can just enjoy so many and everything. And that's, I think the point is finding that joy and enjoying every moment.
Yeah.
That's what makes life rich.
And it's allowed me to really seek that enjoyment. Like,
Right.
I don't think I would have ever left Illinois and moved to Salt Lake City if I didn't.
Oh yeah, we didn't even cover that.
Yeah. If I didn't, really try and go through this program and work on that joy, because my whole family's in Illinois, my whole family's in Chicago, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get out of here. But deep down, I was like, I'm probably going to get stuck here.
I'm a lifer.
I'm a lifer, right? Well, and that's what everybody does for the most part. Most people, born,
where your
raised,
roots are.
which is fine. It's great. But now I'm seeking true joy and fulfillment, and like, I'm going on hikes and I'm doing all these things and just truly enjoying life. And I probably could have stayed in Chicago and still gotten so much fulfillment, but now I'm here and now I get to enjoy ski season and I get to do everything that I really, truly love to do because it's coming from a place of heart. And
you moved here, or you came here over the summer.
Yeah. So
to just see what it'd be like.
Yeah.
Right?
I was like, well, I had a friend that moved here last year, and I was like, well, if you like it, and she was a teacher too, or she is a teacher, and I was like, if the school system works for you out there, like, I probably will follow you next summer. And I wasn't ready to make the full, like, fledged jump, but opportunities lined up for me to move here and spend the summer here. So I was like, well, I'll spend the summer here. If I like it, then I'll move next summer. Like, I'll finish out the school year in Illinois and then move like June 2023, and came here and loved it and just kept loving it and loving it and loving it. And I was like, no, well, I'm still going to go back to Chicago. Like, it just makes sense. Like, on paper, logically, it makes sense. I have a job. Things are good. I have an apartment, whatever. Like, I'll just come back in June. But things just kept aligning and aligning and aligning for me to come here and move here permanently. And so I did it, which doesn't mean it wasn't a little stressful to, find a sublet for my apartment in Chicago and deal with just the shifts of everything. But I listened to my heart for it and was like, no, this is the timing. Things make sense. This is where I should be. This is where I want to be. This is going to just push me even further to a higher place in my life. And, it's still turbulent. Like, I still get stressed and I still go into fear about a lot of things still, but I don't let it last, and I don't let it linger, and I don't let it drag me down and affect, most importantly, my decisions. I don't let the fear dictate what I do. I acknowledge it. I'm aware of it. I'm aware it's there, but I still keep working through in a heart-focused place.
Yeah. So
you're creating the life you desire.
Which is
and
scary. There's a lot of fear, and
there's still some unknowns.
So you kept saying it kept aligning and aligning and aligning.
Yeah.
So weird that you're in a heart coherent state, which is alignment.
Exactly.
When people talk about alignment or flow, it's the cooperative alignment.
Right.
A heart coherent state is the cooperative alignment between heart, mind, and emotional state, which is that state of flow. And the more you're in that, the more things aligned and
Right, like for
that's weird.
right. I know. Well, like for example,
That's interesting.
4th of July weekend, I went on a camping trip with 3 girls. One was my friend who I knew, and then 2 girls I never met before. And one of the girls I just met was like, "Well, if you move here, we could live together." And I was like, And look at that, we
And
live
that's
together.
Riley?
That's
Hi,
Riley.
Riley.
We live together. Yeah. So like it's
That's
just
awesome.
like, and I was like, well, if I come in June next year, like she's gonna have already found a place because she's not gonna want to stay where she's at for another year just because of me. So like it just everything just kept falling into place.
And look at what you did. You opened up your heart to possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And then now
And
you
you took
weren't
the next
you
step.
like when you were going through next level, you're like, yeah, I don't know if teaching's like
Exactly
exactly what I
want to
do.
doing.
Yeah.
And we started exploring that and then you started thinking about it and then opportunities you kept aligning and aligning and aligning with your heart's purpose and your
And
heart's
then
desire.
LT gave me a call while I was back visiting home in Chicago, and she was like, well,
Well,
do you I know you want to still work with kids, but teaching doesn't seem like, because my big thing was like, I want to move to Salt Lake, I want to move to Utah, but I don't want to be a first year teacher all over again. Like
right.
it's stressful to be a first year teacher, learning the new curriculum and just getting into the flow of things. So I was like, whatever I do, if I move this year, I'm not going to be a first year classroom teacher again. And it just so happened that you needed a homeschool teacher for
I'm
your
like, what if
daughter.
you taught, but maybe it wasn't in the schooling system?
Yeah.
What if you could still be a teacher and have it be in a different structure?
And I was like, I like that, but that's scary. Very
Okay.
scary. It's, because salary as a teacher, you get your paychecks every 2 weeks, whatever, but this is a little bit different. But once I started doing it, like I loved it, and it just felt way more fulfilling than the classroom. There's so much benefit of a public school teacher that you don't totally get as a homeschool teacher, but like it just started to align more. And I can't say that this is what I'm going to be doing forever,
Sure.
but
You're
I
open
can-
to possibility.
I can tell that it's going to lead me to wherever it's going
Right.
to. And it's going to continue to keep fulfilling me and leading me down a road of just opportunity. And
Yeah.
And that-
So for right now, until the next step, anyone that's looking for an awesome homeschool teacher or tutor, if your kids are in the public schooling system and they're falling behind, which is very common. I mean, she's up in the Salt Lake area, but also anything over Zoom, which is great
remote,
too. So
Yeah, anywhere.
Reach
But
out to
that's
us.
But that's the coolest
It's
part to
awesome.
me is you opened up your heart. You kept getting into alignment and more things aligned and aligned and aligned. And the quote, "Gal," I'm not gonna say it properly, but I see it on social media all the time where you're not a tree. If you don't like where you're at, move. Right. And that's opening yourself up to possibility. And it's not even that you don't like, but it's like, I'm grateful, but I know there's more. And you moved, you because you're not a tree, you picked up your stuff and you moved here, which is very adventurous and very exciting and a little, scary at the same time because the unknown is scary, but the unknown is what I want to convey. The unknown is where all greatness and all possibility
I've
exists.
been told I've been impulsive, that's
Okay.
been thrown out, but like,
Yeah.
I'm still,
But look, you came here.
I don't think it was impulsive. I
No.
think it's different and adventurous, but it's certainly not
well,
impulsive.
and I like
because-
went through the truly logistics. It's not like I'm just like, oh, I'm listening to my heart. I'm just going to do it and dive in. But like,
I'm going to throw all caution to the wind.
right. But
I'm
I went through the
yeah.
logics and like, okay, will this financially make sense? Will I be able to, clean everything up in Chicago and leave on good terms that way and not burn any bridges and still come here in a
Well, and
exciting
when
way.
because we were in close communication with this process, and you're like, I'm not sure. What do I do? I'm like, what do you want to do? You could stay or you could go, but it was almost like you're not that type that's like, just do it, But it was like, so when we were talking about it, I was like, why don't you see if you can rent your apartment? If you can rent your apartment, that's the next step. If someone rents your apartment, then what about applying with the, schooling system here and getting a job? Or, you know what I mean? It was like, let's take that next step and see if that's a little bit more of a sure footing. But like, ultimately you want to be out here, but it's not like you felt comfortable to just show up and be like, now what?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, let's take the next step. Let's explore the next option. If that works out and everything that you felt like you needed to have in place came together because that's what you were moving toward and that's what you were looking for and willing to consider and it aligned.
And if we always went by logic, not a lot of things would ever work. If we always waited for the things to be perfect, then
Nothing's
right.
gonna
But that's the
come
point,
from.
is what Alti brought up, and that's one of the techniques. The freeze frame is just identifying through your heart the next step. What's the next step? We always get so bogged down with, well, how's it going to work?
Exactly.
And if
It's
you
the
went to
how
like,
we
how's it going to
focus
work?
on.
But if you shift and literally ask your heart, well, what's the next step? Well, maybe I can rent the apartment. And if I do, I rented the apartment. Oh, and then I can do that. Because now you took a chance, you made a choice, you followed your heart, you let your heart guide you to the next steps, and now you're in a beautiful place. And Chicago's beautiful, but you're expanding.
Yeah.
You're living with a great roommate. You have a great thing.
house,
You're making more money than you were in Chicago, right? You're opening yourself up to new possibilities, and that's just going to create more and more possibilities, right?
And I don't know where this is going to lead me to, but now it's not so much
But you're open to
fearful
it.
thing. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, there is so many possibilities and adventures I could go on, and I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm excited and I just know that things are going to work out.
Right.
Like I truly believe that now.
You have the faith. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know how, but you know they
Yeah.
are. And
Whatever it is, and it's going to be turbulent. Things are turbulent, it's life, but it's because I'm kind of starting my own business pretty much as a
Right.
homeschool teacher.
Right.
It's not easy.
You
it's
went
difficult.
from the structure
Safe
and
security.
an employee to an entrepreneur, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're really constructing your own business design.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm never gonna do that, right? But
Right.
like, it's a lot, but it's gonna work out. It always works out. You're never stuck. You're never not going to.
Well, it always works out better than we could imagine. And that's the point, is that the mind is so limited, but we have to get that imagination going. And anything we can imagine already exists. We look at quantum physics, but anything we can imagine already exists, because everything that's existing right now was imagined at one
Right.
point.
Well,
right?
and you
so-
can't imagine unless you're in a creative state. When you're living in fear, you can't create.
shuts down the
It
creative
shuts it
centers.
down.
Yep.
And so when you allow yourself to connect to your heart, you get into a creative flow. And that's when doors really start to open. And that's when you create opportunities that you never could imagine before, because it's imagined. It didn't exist prior to your heart creating it.
Right. Like, it's Bob Proctor, and he just passed not too long ago. Rest his soul. He said, if you can imagine it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. And that's absolutely true. But that's got to come from the heart opening up the head to that imagination that's been so stifled in kids and then adults alike. But once we open up that imagination through that heart coherent state, and we can envision it and imagine it, and then feel
Right,
the
it's that
gratitude that it's
feeling
done.
of it.
Once we open up that feeling and that gratitude and that peace and joy and love for it, it's going to show up.
Yeah. Well, and, there's that book or movie or whatever, The Secret, how everyone's like, if you want the Ferrari, envision you want the Ferrari and you're going to get the Ferrari, which people try and do, but it doesn't actually work that easily because they're not connecting to their heart. And they get so caught up on, if you feel it, you're going to believe it and then it's going to work. But it's really connecting to your heart and knowing that through gratitude, through compassion, through love, it's going to come to fruition. Maybe it's the Ferrari and you want that. And I can't remember the name of the technique you've taught, but you've had us sit and read through the heart.
Oh, yeah.
Heart's desire.
Heart's desire. And so it's like that, but you're truly connecting to your heart and believing that you can get there. And it's so much more powerful than that other technique. Because,
Just thinking of it.
right. Because it's not your head that's going to get it. It's your heart and it's your beliefs. And it's not the fake it till you make it mentality. That's the easy way to sum it up, right? That people quick. But if you're not truly getting into your heart and getting into coherence, faking it till you make it's not actually going to bring that Ferrari for you. Or
Well,
that
and
house.
maybe you don't even want the Ferrari. Maybe for you, it's like, I love teaching. I've found a passion for it. I don't necessarily want to do it in the public schooling system, but gosh, teaching these kids, they've got to learn curriculum. They've got to learn how to read and write and math. But how powerful is it to also have this awareness for emotional resilience. So when they get frustrated, you can teach them these tools too. Like I totally have the chills just talking about it because it's like, that's the kind of teacher I want for my kids.
Right.
Like I need you
That's
to
what
teach her
kids need.
I need you to teach my kid how to read and write.
Well, and
but I also like when she gets frustrated, if you can teach her how to access the power of her heart and to remind her of that. So again, I mean, not that this was a promotion for your work on this call,
but seriously, but during like the next level and after it, I came up with this idea of like Operation Ed. And
we're going to create a new school.
Yeah. Well, and it was when I was still in the public school, I went to my admin and I was like, hey, I have this idea of kind of doing like a mini, almost, I called it like a retreat for them, but like within my classroom, the first week, we really work on that emotional resilience and building those building blocks. Because I could see that if we could build those building blocks for these kids so they know how to regulate their emotions and have like good conversations and work through conflict and all that stuff, then the rest of the year would be fine. And I was like, I know it's going to set our curriculum back, say 2 weeks, but we're going to be able to excel so much faster because we're going to have those tools. And that's something I still want to somehow implement. I don't know what it's going to look like or how it's going to fall into place, but I know it will because even when I became a teacher for the first time, I was like, I'm either going to change the public school system or I'm going to leave it. And I'm not a quitter.
I'm going to leave
and I didn't
make my own.
And maybe I don't know what it's going to turn into. It could create a new school, whatever. But like, I know that there's so much more for these kids that we can create
to
for
tap
them.
into their creativity without teaching them there's one right answer. This is how you have to do it, and have kids get straight A's, but they're stressed out of their minds. They're anxious. And then once they're out, like
right. And then they don't have to wait until they're
now.
30 to try and work through all their childhood trauma. Like all of us adults are trying to do. Like we can make their lives impactful and work through those things while they're happening and build those tools so that when they do become adults, they have that toolbox already built and then they can just expand from it more. And they aren't trying to heal their inner child like all of us are trying to do.
And adding to it as, day after day after day with school stress and
well, and you
social
spend
pressures.
8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 9 months out of the year.
Yes.
That can be the place where you learn how to deal with all of these trials and tribulations that you experience.
Right. And how much more beneficial will kids.
That's why we found each other.
That's and that's part of Raise Your Vibration. That's why we have the family option, is because we want these kids. The kids live in such a different environment than we grew up in. There's so many more stressors. I mean, with just
constant,
with
They can't
just
get away
social
from it.
media, video games, all of it. Like,
They don't have a break. They don't have time to breathe.
it's all this stimulation all the time. And the stress from that is so rampant that that's why the depression and anxiety is through the roof in these kids.
Even in ADD and ADHD.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
ADHD,
Everybody has it
suicide
now.
rates are really high. And that's just, I mean, this depression, this anxiety is so rampant. And that's what, we're on a mission through Raise Your Vibration and
Education.
your teaching and education. But that's where we want, everybody to come to Raise Your Vibration for the family aspect of having your kids benefit and learning how to regulate their emotional state and stay out of that stress, because it's just so damaging to these kids right now and adults alike.
Absolutely.
But my heart goes out to these kids.
Well, and
Because
how
we have
beneficial-
teenagers and we watch it in these teenagers that come over to our house, and I'm just like, oh.
They just can't get away from it.
Well, and how beneficial would it have been for us as kids to have coaching through it, right? I mean, we hire coaches for everything.
Yep.
And you did,
I
like
have a
nutrition
triathlon coach.
Yeah,
I've had nutrition coaches in the past and stuff. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if there's anything more important than emotional regulation. And so even if they just start hearing a little bit of the verbiage, or some options, or have a place to tune into, or their parents are learning this so that they can then, turn around and use the verbiage and reinforce that. It's like, oh my gosh, we do have power here. There is something we can do to take control of our emotional well-being in such a chaotic time in the world. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I
100%.
mean, I think we covered it all today. What a great time it's been listening to Lizzy speak so much.
It really has.
Share her voice.
It really has.
We
And this is the
appreciate you
first.
sharing
Is this the first time you've done a podcast?
Yeah, first time.
I
First
mean,
time I've
you're
really
natural.
talked about myself.
And I mean, we're not necessarily we're not pros either, but we've done. I mean, will be the 6th, but we've been on several of Brad's and Brandon's but it's like you're very
natural.
very natural and very open to tell your story to a microphone and some cameras.
Hey, I mean, don't
get the
Totally.
wrong idea.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, what do I share? Like, because a lot of, my thing is like, I would just live in other people's stories. So I was like, what's my story? What's their story? What can I share that's actually about me and not others? And so going through this, I was like, okay, I don't want to share this. I don't want to share this. Like, I still go to that, but like, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
did it.
Well, and the
It was
coolest part is
beautiful.
that's how people learn. Is I think a lot of people get so intimidated, maybe not intimidated, but
No,
are
intimidated.
very hesitant to share
Right.
their story. That's your message. I like more of the same idea, but like for everybody that's listening, share your story with people because
Yeah.
that's how we learn. That's how we relate. That's
Well,
how
and
we
your
expand.
story includes other people. If
Totally.
you're not isolated, and so you don't want to skew the other person's story and take their story as your own.
Right.
But their story still impacts yours, and it's okay to share bits and pieces of it
Absolutely.
without, taking theirs. And like I
That's
still
your
own
identity.
it. This is
Right.
still mine, and their life affected mine, and your life affected mine, whatever. But it's still mine at the end of the day. And you might get offended that I said something that you did, but you did it, and it affected me, and it's okay.
And it may not have
It's
been how
okay.
you saw it or perceived it, but it's
Right.
how I did, and so it's my
And it's just
explanation of it.
exactly. And I know that everybody is what's the saying? It's like there's their story, your story, and then the truth or
yeah.
whatever it is. So I know that. Like
Yeah.
I know my perception of my childhood and my life and my journey is mine, and
Yes.
you might have a totally different view, but that's okay because it's still my perspective and it's still yours. And I hope that you can have the space to share yours and come back. And
But it's being open and vulnerable because it allows people to understand there's this, that